And it is then going to come out in the news later that it's sterilizing everyone on the earth, and they're going to say it's an accident, and they're going to admit that it's jumping into other species of plants and insect and animal because they're mixing mammal and insect and other reptile genes into fish, into other mammals, into major food staples. And they knew from day one that they can make the desired change, but then it randomly then creates other mutations, and that they've suddenly got oak trees growing corn, out of their seed buds in the spring. I mean, it's just an absolute nightmare. They're polluting and destroying everything, and you're not going to hear one stinking environmental group ever talk about the real environmental holocaust and red-level emergency going on everywhere. No. No, you're going to have BP and the UN say, we're going to tax carbon that humans exhale. And I pointed out that's a war on the carbon cycle and a war on humanity and all human activity. And I said, you watch, they're going to admit it's meant to target humans as a tax. And then Bill Gates and the UN the last 3 months, they all come out and say, yeah, humans are the problem. We can't just cut our other carbon footprint. We got to cut humans. And the average soft, lazy, decadent yuppie who's weak and pathetic will say, well, we do have to get rid of the Africans or the Latin Americans or the Asians. There are too many of them. Hey, those people are 10 times harder working than you are. They didn't have the ancestors that set up the republic that produced all this wealth so you could become decadent slobs. They understand more and more what they're up against. And let me explain something to you. You are the target of this New World Order eugenics. You slack-jawed, dim-eyed, weak. I didn't eat breakfast this morning, and I was really hungry, so I pulled into a diner, La Madeleine, real fast on my way to work, because they can just, boom, give you an omelet in about 2 minutes. And I scarfed it down, and I sat there looking at the people in the restaurant. And it wasn't that they were physically soft. I mean, I'm not some, arrogant, super, sports guy who's 2% body fat. It's just I looked at their eyes and the self-satisfied way they were eating and the little ticks of the way they were slurping their coffee and the way they were caressing their iPads and the way they were. And I watched the people behind the counter fighting with each other and, having slights and just unhappy. I mean, they're in the lap of luxury. The poorest Americans got it better than 90+% of people in the world. Did you know that? Our ancestors, no matter what color you are, had to crawl and scratch through the mud and had to fight hyenas and tigers and lions and grizzly bears and cave bears and wolves and polar bears and were bitten and chased by giant hordes, clouds of mosquitoes, and had to watch most of their children die. Northern European people, literally every grave they dig up have fractures and cracks in their bones from literally jumping on the backs of animals that they were killing with their bare hands. Same story in Africa. They just dug up gladiators from 1900 years ago in England, Roman gladiators, because the Romans controlled Albion, Britannia, today, the UK, and these guys have bites all over their bodies from lions and tigers and wolves and bears, some of which have been exported to England, and huge wounds all over them. And of course, in those type of gladiatorial events, they were actually local heroes and were well paid, weren't slaves by that period. But the point is, and you can look at the National Geographic photos of these giant skeletons. Imagine 1900 years ago when the average man was 5'3", the average height of these skeletons is 6'4", 6'5", some are almost 7 feet. I mean, that's who we are, okay, is vicious, powerful, intelligent, hardworking, dynamic people, not what we've become. Not what we've become. And I'm going to tell you, you look at the elites, you look at Queen Beatrix and the photos the London Guardian has of her at Bilderberg, and you look at these other elitists, they're a bunch of crazed-eyed, demonic control freaks who are soft and pathetic as well. Now, I told you I'd give you the big secret of the BP oil spill. We've got a full breakdown coming up in the next hour and a half at prisonplanet.com and Infowars.com. I've worked on it. Steve Watson's the main organizer of the article. So is Paul Watson, has contributed. It's going to boil down every facet. And it's going to be 6-7 pages long. So if you're lazy I'm talking to new listeners. You won't be able to understand the full scope of why we say evidence mounts that Gulf oil spill is false flag. I believe that's going to be the headline. Okay? If you want to be free, you're going to have to at least read a 7-page article. I'm not being condescending here. I have people call in all the time and send me letters asking me basic questions that I've answered thousands of times. Or asking me to write them a letter back telling them everything. Look, I can't tell you how to eat soup. I can't tell you how to change your diapers, folks, and I'm not trying to be mean here. I like good questions, too. It's just that we're so childlike, they tell us there isn't a world government when it's openly been set up and is unelected and criminal. The games are over, ladies and gentlemen. The world's always been a barbarous, dangerous place. Now it's just got a high-tech overlay, a soft, touchy-feely overlay, which makes it even more deadly. It's a creeping death. But I'll tell you what this oil spill is overall about. It's a political, global distraction from the stock market collapses worldwide and the debt bubble that's out of control. It serves a lot of purposes. And when the globalists do a cost-benefit analysis and decide that a false flag will help them on multi-fronts, they launch it. So I'm going to go over the different ways this helps the New World Order agenda. Then I'm going to get into the economy, and it is hardcore news. Basically, it's everything we've talked about on this show for a decade is now in the Wall Street Journal, MSNBC, and CNN, which means you better watch it. We'll be back. We are back live. Well, after Copenhagen, their big push to get a funding mechanism for world government was in deep trouble. As the Bilderberg Group was quoted as saying last week, we're about whipped. Public knows we're running a giant fraud, a giant scam. And so you have a big oil leak out in the Gulf a month after Obama announced that he was going to allow drilling. Oh, quite a reversal. Then he gives an award to the very oil rig that explodes mysteriously. And then all these top petroleum geologists and others tell them how to fix it, and they never follow any of the advice. And so now they're going to get to try to push their global carbon tax in the name of having money to clean this up. And they're also hyping the oil like it's the end of the world. Yeah, it'll mess up the season in Florida and some areas. Yeah. But oil is biodegradable. I mean, I've been to the beach. I've seen balls of oil that have little crustaceans, little crabs, and plants growing out of it. It's actually full of nutrients. Within a year, different biologists are on record saying that almost all the oil will be consumed. It's biodegradable. What is toxic? They've got the cleanup crews with all these poisonous, heavily refined chemicals dumping it into the oil on the seashores to dissolve it. That's what's killing most of the animals. You know, they show you an oily pelican. It's the government banning all fishing out there. When most areas don't have oil, they could do some spot testing and checking of the seafood. Some of it might be contaminated. They could demand that there be spot checks. But what's causing the economic destruction is that the government for a month has said no fishing in the Gulf of Mexico, in the areas that are affected. And they're blocking the media. We've seen even CBS News with all their power. Armed men in boats pull up and say, we're under orders from Halliburton. Local police and Coast Guard, since when do they take the orders? Now, I know I haven't talked a lot about the spill in the last 40-plus days. And that's because I've been collating. I've been tracking. I've been researching. I've been constantly thinking about it. Day one, my gut told me it's probably an inside job.